2 years had passed, but when this dog saw his owner again, what he did left everyone in tears. You won't believe the bond they shared. One quiet evening, Emma's dog Max disappeared. He was more than just a pet. Max was her best friend, always by her side. Every day he would wait by the door for her to come home, wagging his tail like she was the best part of his world. But that night, Max slipped through an open gate and never came back. Emma searched everywhere. She called out his name, walked the streets and knocked on every door. She put up flyers, hoping someone would recognize him. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's hopes slowly began to fade. She couldn't stop thinking about him. Was he safe? Was he even alive? Weeks turned into months, and eventually 2 whole years passed. Emma never forgot about Max, but she started to accept that he was gone. Her heart still ached, but she knew she had to move forward. Then, one ordinary afternoon, Emma decided to visit a local animal shelter. She wasn't looking for Max anymore. She just wanted to help another dog find a home. As Emma walked past the kennels, her eyes scanned the dogs. They all looked at her with hopeful eyes, wagging tails and shy movements. Then she heard it. A bark. It wasn't loud, but something about it made her stop in her tracks. She turned toward the sound and saw him. There he was. A scruffy white dog, thinner and rougher than she remembered, but there was something familiar in his eyes. Emma's heart raced. Could it really be Max? She stepped closer to the kennel. "Max?" she whispered, barely able to speak. The dog tilted his head, staring at her intently. Then his tail started wagging, slowly at first, then faster and faster. Suddenly Max leaped up and barked with excitement. Emma fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. It was him. After all this time, Max had found his way back to her. The shelter staff explained that Max had been found wandering the streets miles away, hungry and scared. No one knew how he had survived for so long, but it didn't matter anymore. He was home now. Emma adopted Max on the spot. When they got home, Max ran straight to the door, wagging his tail like he had never been gone. He settled into his old spot by the couch, as if nothing had changed. Over the next few weeks, Max began to heal. His fur became soft again, and his playful energy returned. Emma couldn't believe it. 2 years apart hadn't changed a thing. Max still loved her, just as much as the day he left. Their bond was unbreakable. This story is a reminder to never give up on the ones you love. If you've ever lost a pet, hold on to hope. Miracles can happen when you least expect them. And remember, thousands of dogs like Max are waiting in shelters right now, hoping for a second chance. He was found barely alive, with a wire cutting deeper into his neck every day. It started with a frantic call to the local animal rescue team. A man had spotted a stray dog limping near an abandoned field. He described the dog as skinny, weak, and in obvious pain. The rescue team rushed to the scene, unsure of what to expect. When they arrived, they saw a heartbreaking sight. A white dog, trembling and covered in dirt, barely able to stand. But it was what they noticed on his neck that shocked them. A wire was tightly wrapped around his throat, cutting so deep into his skin that it was almost invisible. The dog, who they later named Buddy, flinched as they tried to approach him. He was terrified, but too weak to run. Carefully, they placed him in a crate and took him straight to the shelter's emergency clinic. When the vet examined Buddy, the situation was worse than they imagined. The wire wasn't just cutting into his skin, it had become embedded in his neck, causing a severe infection. The vet guessed it had been there for months, tightening more and more as Buddy grew. The wound was deep, oozing with pus and crawling with maggots. Everyone in the room was horrified. The vet knew there wasn't a moment to lose. They sedated Buddy and began the delicate task of removing the wire. Piece by piece, they worked to free him from the cruel grip of the metal. As the last piece was cut away, the team could finally see the full extent of the damage. His neck was raw, swollen, and scarred. It was a miracle Buddy had survived this long. After the surgery, the real battle began. Buddy was weak, dehydrated, and traumatized. He needed constant care to fight off the infection and regain his strength. For days he barely moved, his fragile body too exhausted to do anything but rest. Volunteers stayed by his side, talking to him softly and giving him small bits of food. As the weeks went by, something amazing happened. Buddy began to trust again. His tail, once tucked between his legs, started to wag. His eyes, once dull with pain, began to shine. Slowly, he transformed from a scared, broken dog into a happy, playful one. Then came the best day of all. Clara, a kind woman who had recently lost her senior dog, came to the shelter looking to adopt. When she saw Buddy, she fell in love instantly. Despite the scars on his neck, she saw the sweet, loving dog he had become. That day, Buddy went home with Clara, beginning a new chapter filled with love and happiness. She was clinging to the edge, her strength fading with every second. What happened next will bring tears to your eyes. It was a quiet afternoon when the rescue team received a frantic call. A villager had spotted a dog trapped in a deep well, desperately trying to stay afloat. The caller described the scene with urgency. The dog, drenched and shivering, was paddling with all her might to keep her head above water. She looked exhausted, as though she had been fighting to survive for hours. The team immediately sprang into action. They loaded their gear and raced to the location. When they arrived, their hearts sank. There she was, a small brown dog, clinging to the jagged stone walls of the well. Her eyes were wide with fear and her breathing was labored. Every few seconds she slipped below the waterline before frantically scrambling back up, desperate to hold on. There was no time to waste. The well was deep and narrow, making the rescue incredibly dangerous. One team member carefully secured himself with ropes and descended into the well, carrying a harness to lift her out. As he got closer, the dog's panic intensified. She began to splash wildly, unsure if he was there to help or harm her. Speaking softly, the rescuer tried to calm her down. He reached out slowly, and after what felt like an eternity, she allowed him to slip the harness around her fragile body. With a signal to the team above, they began to lift her out. The dog whimpered softly as she rose, her tired body finally free from the icy grip of the water. Once on solid ground, the team wrapped her in a warm blanket. She was shaking uncontrollably, her eyes darting around in confusion and fear. They gave her small sips of water and gently rubbed her fur to bring back warmth. She was weak and visibly traumatized, but she was alive. Back at the shelter, the team named her Mira, meaning miracle, because that's what her survival truly was. Over the next few days, Mira began to regain her strength. She ate cautiously at first, but soon started wagging her tail whenever someone came to see her. Slowly, her fear turned into trust. Weeks later, a family visited the shelter looking to adopt. When they saw Mira, they fell in love instantly. Despite the scars of her ordeal, Mira greeted them with a wagging tail and hopeful eyes. That day, Mira found a forever home, where she would never have to fight for her life again. Mira's story is a reminder of the resilience of animals and the life-changing power of kindness. She went from clinging to the edge of despair to finding a home filled with love and security. Every day, animals like Mira face unimaginable challenges. Your support can make a difference. Adopt, donate, or volunteer at your local rescue. Together, we can be the heroes they need.